I'm just curious then, why do you still feel like I'm a feminist? I'm just curious.
Okay.
Let's maybe just move on. Let's move on. Let's move on. But maybe we can come back to it. I had one quick question for you. You say you don't want to date men who play video games. I don't object to that preference. Would you object to, for example, a man not wanting to date a woman who does OnlyFans?
No.
Okay.
I think that's fair.
Sure.
It's not for everybody.
Okay.
The video games, I think I would just I'd be open to it, but I would really need to see that you're in control and it's not an addiction that comes before your family.
Sure. And bringing it back to, I think, the original question. So we're going around the table asking if everybody was a feminist. I think what I was trying to get at...
Modest Hikima donated $200. Andrew W. Why are we pretending men and women are the same, and letting men who identify as women to literally take over women's sports? It is literally Looney Tune land.
Yeah, it is.
Hamill, do you live in Looney Tune?
Yo, Modest, thank you, man. Appreciate it. My question for you guys is, because some of you guys said, well, I'm a feminist. I think it was primarily you, and then you, Farha, but you also enjoy those more traditional elements. And when you say the traditional elements, would you say the guy being chivalrous, paying for first dates?
Yeah, I think that I should pay for first dates and take on a lion's share of the bills.
Lion's share of the bills?
Even if the girl doesn't meet submissive feminine qualities.
Even if the girl doesn't meet submissive feminine qualities?
I mean, he doesn't have to. It's his prerogative, but I think it's still congruent with feminism.
Well, that's my question. How do you reconcile being feminists, which I suppose a typical feminist belief is gender equality, doing away with gender roles? How do you reconcile being feminist, but also demanding men adhere to their more traditional gender roles, such as paying for first dates, chivalry, et cetera, et cetera? How do you reconcile that?
Because feminism is about social spheres to me. So even if women were to occupy 50% of Congress, 50% of leadership roles, were to 50% CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, that doesn't, affect the fact that if you and I were dating and we were hooking up, I'm the one who has to take birth control so that you can nut at me. If we were to have a kid, I'm the one who has to bear the child. I'm
Are
the
you
one
on
who has
birth
to
control?
deal with. No, I'm not fucking, but or if when we have a child, I'm the one who's going to have my pussy torn open to bear your child. I'm the one who has to breastfeed. So at the end of the day,
sure.
You can only go 50-50 so far, and this idea of going 50-50 in terms of bills is actually just more of a burden on the woman, because you can never go 50-50 in terms of actual reproductive
But that
roles.
assumes that the first person you ever date, that ends up becoming your husband and the person you have children with. So
not
also
necessarily.
assumes
Even if you're just
children.
hooking up, I mean, birth control increases your chance of breast cancer by
if I'm
20%.
dating-
It fucks up your hormones. I'm just altering my body.
But so
for
if
you.
I'm dating a woman who's not on birth control and she doesn't want to have children, under those circumstances, would you be okay with the woman like a 50-50 dynamic, or even then you'd object to it?
It's not that I would object. I would just say, generally, given the dynamics of dating and the idea that usually people are having sex and that women are taking birth control so that the man can have increased
A lot
sexual
of women
pleasure.
are not on birth control.
Okay,
but they
well,
still
just
have
given the
sex.
idea of a goal of a relationship, which is typically that you're dating to have kids, or you're dating to marry to then have kids. So I'm seeing it more in a macro sense. I think the idea of 50-50 is ridiculous.
Well, she just went on 100.
If you're just doing hookup culture and whatever she's doing, then I don't think, I think 50-50 seems more fair. Yeah.
What about you? I mean, you just went on 100 first dates in the past 2 months. Do you want a guy to pay for the first date?
I don't want them, but I think this is a great indication of where they are in life. So if somebody doesn't...
Well, earlier in the
choice.
conversation, you said you want a guy who matches you,
exactly,
or exceeds you.
So if they feel like they cannot, or for whatever, I'm just assuming that it's their materialistic situation that doesn't allow them to pay for the date, it probably not somebody I should be seeing, because it's gonna cause tension later on.
Okay.
But that's completely optional. If they want to split, I'll split it.
Would there be a second date? You might.
It depends on how much I like them, because it's not all about the money.
It would be a negative if a guy wanted to split the bill.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want to take it over?
Well, what about this Okay, we don't have to get back into that, but.
But that's where my traditional values come. I don't think it's against anybody. it's 50-50, but like for my goals of like I want a big family, like, and that's again what are you dating for? You need to like find out your purpose. So if like I was dating right now to like have like a family, like of course I'm not going to date like the guy who works at Subway because he probably doesn't make enough money to provide for 4 kids.
Let me ask you too a question. So you said societally you want equality, but when it comes to romantic relationships you want tradition. Would you...
It's not that I want tradition. I think that the biological imperative of men and women is going to be there, even if women are CEOs and are taking on a more masculine role in larger society.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Would you take your husband's last name?
If it was a nice last name, yeah.
Yeah.
What about you? Would you take your husband's last name?
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm not,
I mean, if I was super like Kim K famous, then I'd probably do a hyphenated like Kardashian West
really,
situation.
But so you're saying you demand tradition romantically, but romantic tradition would dictate that in a marriage you would take your husband's last name and your children would also have your husband's last name, regardless of how egregiously bad his last name was or wasn't.
Yeah, I mean the kids can take his name or both our names. No, but you would take it too.
That's tradition. Romantic, that's tradition romantically.
I said some traditional values. I didn't say necessarily relationships have to be entirely traditional. I said in terms of paying the bills, I have more traditional values.
Well, when the kid is born, what name does he get? Does the kid get?
I guess it's up to the couple at hand if they want to hyphenate it, if they want to pick one.
In your traditional worldview, when it comes to dating anyways, your feminist traditional worldview.
For me personally, I want to keep my name for my own branding. For like the average couple, I think you could hyphenate it. I think
if you had a kid,
that's not traditional though.
Yeah. So, and if you had a kid,
I said some traditional values. My point was.
So you only want the traditional values that benefit you.
It's not about benefiting. It's about evening out the fact that my reproductive role is not 50-50. So why would we go 50-50 on bills?
Well, what about the fact that
we can't go 50-50 on that caregiving aspect?
But if you are in the caregiving aspect and you're staying at home, you're taking care of the kid, your obligation to that is only 18 years. So if he's working, right, he's working to support you the entire time. Mm-hmm. After that obligation is done, he's still working and you're not working. So you get, in some ways you get a shortcut to retirement. Example.
Wow. Yo, AB Check. Thank you so much, man, for the gifted 50 memberships. An example?
Yeah, example. Me and my wife, okay? The youngest one that I have now left at home, 12 years old, okay? That's not going to, or 11 years old. It's not that long, okay? That's only, a few short years before she may launch out of the pad. Well, now my wife, she's pretty young. She's still pretty young, and she'll still be fairly young even when that happens. But I'll still be taking care of and paying all the bills. She won't have to do any of that, right? So yes, she took care of her obligation on the front end, but on the back end, the man's still working the entire time. So I don't see where this idea of fairness comes from you when you say, well, it's because I have to give birth and then stay at home. It's like, well,
thank you, Honda.
That's the easier job, one, and then two, you're paid for even after the child's no longer needs 24-hour assistance. And remember the time frame when that happens, it's only the first 2-3 years when they really need round-the-clock assistance.
Yeah, I'm not correlating it to round-the-clock assistance. And also, most couples have more than one child. And so it's not just the first 18 years. It could be up to 30 years in theory.
Yeah, even if it's 30 years.
Yeah, obviously they could tailor it to their actual familial duties and their plans.
Right, but really, even when you look at the cycle, let's say you had 5-6 kids, something like that. Most people won't. They'll have 2 or 3, right? But let's just assume it for the sake of assuming it. They usually spaced out by 2 or 3 years. Okay, so they don't need round-the-clock assistance after the first couple of years. They don't need that anymore. And then the older they get, when they get to 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, basically every single year that goes, the less that you really have to focus on taking care of them, other than like basic meals, things like this. They can basically take care of themselves. They can brush their own teeth, comb their own hair, everything.
Most mothers don't just...
it's not like they're 18 and they just fly away.
Well, I'm not saying that they are, but even then, when they're not flying away and they're 18, it's the man who's covering their bills then too.
So then, if a question for you, Farah.
I just had a different upbringing, so it's like I'm
man
that
covering their
outlier
bills. But even if the kid stays, Now the man's still taking care of that, and the mom doesn't have to take care of it at all. Not at all. Doesn't have to work, doesn't have to do anything, and the caregiving portion of it, that's gone. And the man's still working, taking care of him, even if the kid doesn't
But
leave.
is the wife not taking care of you anymore either? Like
Well,
you know, cooking,
But
cleaning,
but
and
if
stuff
you're
like
talking
that.
about what's equal, right? Isn't the wife supposed to be doing that?
No, I
Right. So if she's
agreeing. I'm
supposed to be
asking.
doing that as already as a baseline, you can't throw that in and say, well, it makes it more equal. That's just her job.
No, I didn't say it made it more equal. I was just asking
Yeah.
if in your situation you're still expecting after all these
Oh
things
yeah,
happen
no,
for
I
her to
expect
still take
breakfast
care of you.
made, I expect lunch made, I
And you
expect
don't think
dinner made.
that's-
I expect
that's
all of
not
that. Yeah.
That's not a emotion. That's not a task. Like
No,
That
it's
doesn't
a
that's
task, but it
draining.
seems like
You deserve to be
it doesn't
compensated.
seem very
Energy
difficult
donated
compared to the.
$200.
But have you tried
I'm
it?
just catching
Yeah.
up. Major Air Elf for Modest Simpika. That 304 looks like our slurred Jasmine on crack. That's Simp Shiat. She won't bang you. Also, can the panel pronounce miscognistic? Hashtag I want smoke.
what word are they? Misogynistic.
Yeah, we had a girl in the previous show totally butcher the pronunciation
Oh, I'm like.
of that word. Thank you, LP. Appreciate it, man.
So anyway, yeah,
Thank
when you just kind of like dive back in, maybe to wrap this up or whatever, but yeah, when you're talking about her tasks and duties, no, I don't think her tasks and duties are draining. I think that she was able, in fact, to have so much additional time based on my labor that she was able to write a best-selling book, which is a best-selling book right now that you can buy. And you know who gets all of the royalties of that book? Me. Every bit of it. Every bit. She doesn't, and if she gets any of it, it's due to my largest. Why? Because I took care of her for the entirety of her life and took good care of my children for the entirety of their life.
And do you have
will
a
still
plan
continue
for
to
them
do so.
after you die?
Of course. Assuming I'm the one who goes first, right? But you don't know how that'll go. But we're still looking at, we're still pretty young, right? Ultimately.